Thanks for
So,
having me.
thank you for coming. We're so happy to have you here.
Yes, of course. I'm super excited. It's like funny to be back in like kind of a classroom setting.
Yeah,
Like we have
I know.
assignments due and all that. I'm like, oh, this is bringing me back a little bit.
Totally. Hopefully you weren't having any anxiety around it. They're not due for you, don't worry. Well, I wonder if you could just kick off by talking about your career path from FIT to now and how you got yourself started.
Yeah, so I kind of started doing music in the break between, so I started at FIT and my financial aid didn't go through for my second year, so I had to take a year off. And in that time, I kind of worked at restaurants. I just worked around downtown New York. And then I applied to go to FIT. And I applied
I
to
think
go to,
I think you meant to say you started elsewhere. You started at Pratt, is that right? I
yeah.
think you said you started at FIT, but you started at
Oh,
Pratt
sorry.
before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry
Yeah.
about that. Yeah. And then I applied to FIT and I went for textile design. So I kind of started making music in that little break between the two schools. And so while I was at FIT, I was finishing like my debut EP. And so I was between classes kind of working on that. And also during that time, at FIT, it was a little funky because I was also kind of getting street cast because this was like before Instagram. So like for modeling jobs and things like that, you would get like street cast on the street by just random, casting directors and things like that. And that was kind of how I made my money. Like during school, I was kind of just doing little campaigns and jobs here and there. And so I did music and I was doing that. And my music kind of started to take off towards my last year at FIT. So I did 2 years there. And as I was like finishing my last projects, I remember I got my first like New York Times article and in that last semester.
Wow, that's
And
awesome.
it was kind of crazy because my professors, they gave me a lot of leeway because I did have to sometimes like miss class because I was like, I got this job. It's like $2,000, which for me was that's a lot. Like if you're in college, you need books, you need all these things, and so
Yeah.
I would be like, I have this gig. Can I please? I'm gonna miss class. How can I work with you on this? And so they gave me leeway during that time, and it was really funny at the end when the article came out. They were like, I'm glad you like were actually doing something and you weren't lying the whole time. So they so it ended up being fine, but it was very, very I just remember that time period being like a lot of work because I was in class from like 9 a.m. till like 6, like most days, like doing a full
Wow.
course load. And then after that, I was like working in restaurants, which was like 7 p.m. My restaurant worked with me because they knew I had class. So sometimes I would start at 7 and sometimes I would start at 8 or 9. And I would work until like 2:30 in the morning and then get
Wow.
home and then do the same thing again over and over again. So it was kind of wild during that time and then the music stuff. But I remember it being really, really fun being at FIT.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So while you were here, what did you study?
I studied textile design for an associate's degree. So
Okay.
it was a lot of like prints and patterns, a lot of painting and drawing and working with gouache. And then there was a lot of weaving, screen printing, and then we also worked in like the digital way as well. So we did a lot of Adobe, like Photoshop and Illustrator and stuff like that.
That's great. Did you take this course, Spaces and Places in Fashion?
No, I didn't.
No. Okay. It was required for it's still required for a couple of degrees, but not what you studied. So just wondering if you took it as an elective. So obviously you were working on your music while you were here, but did you ever participate in any clubs on campus or anything that you found worthwhile that you'd want to share your experience about?
I didn't actually, and I wish I did more. I feel like when I was in college, I spent a lot of time like in downtown kind of exploring that scene of like fashion
New
and
York.
events and yeah, I was just like out and about and doing all of that. When I was at Pratt, it felt a lot more like a campus environment for me where I was like, oh, I'm just gonna just stay on campus because it kind of has that more like insular feeling to it. But FIT is kind of like a school that's like in the middle of the city. And so I felt like I didn't stay in dorms. I kind of at that point had my own like apartments and stuff. So I really like came to school just for school. I actually did meet one of my close friends who's also an FIT alumni, who's like a really kind of famous fashion DJ now, Kitty Cash. And I met her whilst I was like at FIT. So we would pretty much like hang and like get lunch together and kind of discuss. But I really just like came for my classes and then I kind of just like left.
Yeah. Well, what would be your advice for a student now looking back, 10 years later on your experience, what would you recommend to them?
Yeah, I would recommend exploring like what the city has to offer because for me and exploring people and places that have to do with the world that you're in, like really take the time like off campus to try to check out fashion events or try to check out, little things that are going on around the city where you can meet people and potentially find people to work with or collaborate with. And then I also think like within your classmates, there's so much like availability to like start things together because you're kind of both
Yeah.
in like starting place and you have all of these peers that are doing different things than you. Somebody might be really great at like marketing, somebody might be a designer, somebody might be good at PR, and you can find all of these things and like create something together, which I think is really cool.
Really
Like I
cool.
didn't
Yeah.
always do it on campus, but I think like having that network of friends or people around you that you're inspired by and like building something together could be really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And now knowing this path that you have taken, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Um, Not really. I feel like I would have liked to I think work a little bit more in the thing I majored in. Like I
Hmm.
obviously didn't see music coming at all. It wasn't something that I was expecting to do. It was just kind of like a hobby that happened to turn into like a longer career, but um I would have liked to do more design. But I did use a lot of and I still to this day use a lot of the things I learned at FIT because I learned Adobe there and like within like my work that I do all of my own creative direction and design and merch and packaging and web
Wow.
design. So it's like if I didn't know how to use Photoshop when I first started, I would have been like at a real disadvantage because like being an indie artist when you first begin, it's like you don't really have the money to hire people to do everything for you. So it's good to be as self-sufficient as you can be. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't have really like changed anything about it. I think having that um, workload and also having it in the city really prepared me for like kind of the amount of work it takes to like be like a working artist. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Um, so obviously, I listed a number of different fashion publications that you have collaborated with or worked with, and I wonder if you could share a little bit about what it's like working with different fashion publications.
Yeah, so I tend to like work with them from the like talent side, obviously. But I think it's been nice to know like the different niche that each like company is, and learning like what they find interesting or what they find important. And so I've gotten to work with like different writers when people kind of like interview me or doing like editorials with brands or doing editorials with like magazines, which is really fun and it's like kind of a collaborative space a lot of the time, which is nice. Um, but really it just like depends on the brand, but I've liked, growing relationships with magazines through the years, different writers and different people that have like an interest in your career. And so I've kind of worked with them more in like that capacity.
Yeah, that's great. And so you created some capsule collections. One for Maison Kitsune. Am I saying that right? Kitsune? I always trip up on that. Maison Kitsune and X Girl Japan. Um, can you tell us a little bit about that and how it started and how your process went?
Totally. Yeah, so I always like have loved fashion, so I've always kind of put that into the deals that I do for myself.
Yeah,
So
that's great.
I had a deal with Maison Kitsune for this EP that I made, like when I first started, and they wanted to sign me for like a project. And I kind of wrote, me and my team wrote into that deal, hey, like if we sign to do this, Keisha's really interested in doing a capsule collection or interested in doing some type of partnership in this way. And I think that's like the fun thing about deals is you can always like throw something on the table and see if it sticks.
Yeah.
With the interests and the things that you're interested in, and it doesn't always stick, but in that case it did, and which was really really fun for me, and we were able to like come up with like a little collection based off of I think it was like we wanted like
That's
touristy t-shirts for like Los Angeles, and
that's great.
for like an Americana trip, and because it's a French company. And so we wanted to make these kind of like Americana 70s like t-shirts and stuff. Yeah.
There
And
you
so
go.
we wanted it to feel like just like travel t-shirts, and we shot in LA, and we played with the colors, we played with like some of the drawings are mine and little like patterns and stuff that I'd come up with. And yeah, and then we shot it in Los Angeles, like with one of my close friends, Brandy. And it was really fun. It was fun to
So
see
cute.
actually the way that brands work and their timelines on things, and all the different various steps that it takes to actually get something from start to finish. Like we were like, oh, we want to do this color, we want to do this outfit, and they're like, oh, actually, we don't have that fabric anymore. We have to start from square one. So there were like a lot of things I got to learn doing that, where it's like you
Yeah.
can't always get exactly what you want, but you can like work in real time on this kind of crazy intense schedule to see what you get by the end, and we were both happy. So
Very cool. How long was the whole process
it was a while ago, but I remember it was like at least 6 months long, where we were
from
just
the
going
start?
back and forth, yeah, with initial designs and ideas, and they're like, well, this is what we can produce for this budget with this time frame, and so it's nice to have those kind of parameters because then it really hones in on the idea a little bit better.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And how does your fashion impact your day-to-day work otherwise? I mean, other than these small collaborations.
So I think as a music artist, fashion can be a huge part of it. It depends like
Hmm.
what kind of artist you are, but I think for me, and the projects that I do, I like to like come up with a look for that project or that time period. And so then I'll kind of build that. And you can also work with like a stylist. I do sometimes, sometimes I don't, but you can work with someone to like curate that a little bit more, or like seek out specific brands that fit the concepts of what you're working on. So like for
Hmm.
example, my last album that I've been working on this year and last year was called American Girl. And so we were like obviously reaching out to Levi's and like kind of American heritage brands to like to partner with for custom and things like that. So it's really a fun way to like add depth to a project, I think. Um, and then also fashion is such a huge part of entertainment as a whole. Like I think we all love to like watch the Met Gala or watch like these red carpets and see like what people are wearing. So I think as a entertainer, it's a huge part of it.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. And it's probably not what you envisioned back, back when you were at FIT or Pratt, but it's pretty cool to see this different iteration in all that you do. So, what do
Totally.
you what do you feel like's been the hardest part of your career so far?
Um, I think just learning, just navigating the industry is a little bit hard. I think for anybody that takes the risk of doing jobs that are like, more creative or just something that's like closer to your heart, something that you're really passionate about, that doesn't have like a clear cut path. It's really difficult to figure out like where you fit within it. So I think the hardest part is just like realizing what your path is versus like
Yeah,
knowing like, oh, I saw this person do this, let me try to do it exactly like them. That only like works to a certain extent, because then you'll realize like, oh, actually I don't like doing this or I don't like doing that. So I think it's really like having kind of faith in yourself to keep going that extra mile and to keep like trying, especially when you get like rejection and things like that. So I think
Yeah.
it's really like having like the fortitude and the grit to continue, especially in like fashion or in art or music or any of those kind of spaces. It's like you really have to want it, but then also having um, patience with yourself that like you'll get if you have enough, fortitude, you'll get there eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. And I guess the flip side of what the hardest part is, what do you feel like has been the best part so far?
The best part is just how many places I've been able to go and people I've been able to meet and like various kind of projects I've been able to do. So the travel has been great, like being able to play shows in different places or go to fashion events in different places and just meet so many different kinds of people and artists and designers. So that's really fun. Um, and then also just like making my projects and seeing the impact that they can make on
Hmm.
other people,
Yeah.
or the way that they can inspire other people to like try things. That's been
Yeah.
really nice. Yeah.
That's great. We're kind of piggybacking off that comment. Where has been your favorite place to travel?
Um, I think for me, Tokyo is always a favorite.
Oh,
I always get super inspired when I'm there, like the last couple of times that I've gone. And I always go to like play a show or to like take like a meeting or something, but it's been really like an inspiring place for me. Just
yeah.
you always like go and you're like, wow, like I would never have thought of doing it like this, but it just always gives me like fresh inspiration and like excitement.
Really cool. Yeah, that's really neat. Do you feel like, I mean, obviously it's different. A lot of people in the class are hoping to be designers or launch their own company one day. I don't know. Maybe we'll hear at the end if there are some others who are thinking they may go a musical route too, even despite what their degrees going to be in. But do you feel like there's a really big difference in energy or, in effort and working between New York City and LA in your two different experiences in those cities?
I think for fashion, like New York is definitely better. I think that it I think it's just so much easier to get to Paris or to get to Milan or to get to these some of these other places where people are having fashion events from New York. And I think that it's just such a better interplay between the major cities of like Europe and New York City. Fashion in
Yeah.
LA has gotten a lot better over the last couple of years. I've lived here for almost like 7 years now. So
Wow.
it's been like when I first got here, there were pretty much no fashion events, nothing going on really. I had to always fly back to New York or somewhere else to go, or be in the mix of things. But now I think LA has a lot more going on, but it's a lot in the like entertainment and celebrity space. So it depends
Hmm.
what kind of like design you want to do because there's tons of events that are always taking place in LA too. So like if you do design for red carpet or things that people would potentially wear in those kind of spaces, I think LA is cool. But I think just in general, I feel like New York is such a more like fashionable city just in general for inspiration and um like magazines and like museums and like history. Like I think New York is way better for that.
Yeah, yeah. Was there any difference in attitude with people you worked with in either place or
Not, I
hours?
mean, I think I think I just tend to enjoy working with folks from New York a little bit more. I think maybe that's just because like I feel like I became an adult in New York. I feel like that's like a
Yeah.
part of my personality. Like I moved to New York when I was 18, so and I lived there for like 6 years. So I guess I just feel more comfortable. Um,
Yeah.
LA to me, and I don't want to be like um, stereotypical of like what people say about LA, but I feel like it just can be a little bit more superficial sometimes, or like
Mm.
in the entertainment space a little bit more focused on Hollywood, and
Yeah.
less focused on like art and design.
Yeah, that's great. Wondering if you could share with us a time in your career that you maybe made a mistake, but what you learned from
Oh, I make so many mistakes.
it. Don't we all?
Yeah. Um, I think I made, yeah, so many different kinds of mistakes, like, because it's a lot that you're learning when you essentially, a musician is an entrepreneur or like a business owner like anybody else. And so you have to learn the business side of like whatever the world you're in is. So it's like the finance, the taxation, all of those kind of things, like having your own company, um, hiring, firing, like all of those kind of mistakes of just the learning curve of what it is to be like a business owner or like
Yeah.
somebody that is launching a product or a campaign of any kind. An album is a campaign, you know, so it's really
Yeah.
just like you can make so many different mistakes. Like there's like who you choose for PR, who you choose as manager, who you choose to surround yourself with as a team, how you choose to lead them. I think a lot of it is really learning curves to leadership, really. And I think designers would also kind of have those same kind of struggles when you're first starting out because it's like you can only do something yourself for so long. So then now you're collaborating with others and hiring people and potentially signing deals or contracts for funding. So it's really, I would say, always have a lawyer for your deals. Obviously, I feel like people know that now, but
Yeah.
also the right lawyer matters too. Somebody that you can actually trust, and then I'll always read your contracts front to back a few times. And then also, I think take the time you want to make decisions on things. Don't feel, if you feel really pressured to do something by someone, it might be a good chance to like relook at it again to make sure that you're not getting like played in any kind of way. So I think it's really take your time, follow your gut. You're gonna make mistakes whilst doing this, but it's like if it's for something that you really, really care about and it's something near to your heart, I feel like the mistakes are worth it. You'll just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. What has been the number one thing you've hired out for other than maybe like a lawyer?
Um, Well, in music, you have to hire out for a lot of different things. So there's like management, because there's still kind of the stigma in music for artists to like kind of answer their own emails or to be in charge of the things that they're doing. So you kind of have to have a manager. There's your agent, so that's usually a WME or like a large CAA or a larger like box agency that would put you up for brand partnerships. Um, or they would like route tours for you, things like that. And then in music, a lot of times people will have a business manager, which is another person that would handle your like financial side, insurance, tax, all those kind of things, paying out people. And then you have your publicist, and and a lot of people will have a publicist in each different territory. So you'll have your US or your Europe or your Asia, and so you have all these different people working in that
Wow.
place. And then you might hire out somebody for like radio, or you might hire out someone for like college radio. There's all these like different various
Mm,
like places that you, and basically artists like, and you'll see a lot of this now, artists are kind of talking more candidly about these kind of things because at the end of paying all those people, you're only really going to get 40% of anything that comes into you before
wow.
tax.
Wow.
So that's very like this huge misconception about like musicians or artists or even like maybe even in fashion design or things like that, where it's like you think
Yeah.
that they're going to make a ton of money doing this, but it's like when you realize how much help you actually need to do it, it
You
kind
get
of
stripped.
like, yeah, you get stripped. So it's really like keep that in mind also as well, like the
Yeah.
realistic like cost of doing business.
Uh-huh.
But I think there's ways around these things, and I think the more that you do yourself, like for me, for example, I don't have to hire out designers or a lot of time, or I don't have to hire out for videos or whatever else because I do those things myself. So I think it really is just like how much you want to do yourself versus how much you want to like hire out.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's good advice. I guess one of the things that it just made me curious about that I do feel like actually translates to whatever, to fashion as well. You have, I mean, close to 1 million followers on Instagram, and wondering if that you feel like there was a way that you acquired followers, or it
Oh, I
was,
only have like,
organic. Oh, close to 100,000. I'm
yeah, I was
sorry.
like,
It
oh.
was like 99.
I was
It was like
like,
99,000. I'm sorry.
yeah.
Close to 100,000.
How did I
Um,
acquire? I think just kind of naturally, just through the years. I'm not the best at the social media side of being an artist. I think a lot of artists are way, way better at like staying more in constant contact. I don't really post as much as most people. But I think, yeah, just naturally, every project that I do, you'll get like a big bump or a big surge in people discovering you. So I think it's
yeah.
like really putting out like consistent work,
Uh-huh.
or consistently. I think consistently posting does the best job of it, but I don't
Yeah.
really follow that at my own advice either with that. But I
Yeah.
think it's really just like having something that people would want to like follow you for too,
Hmm.
and like either teaching something or having some type of product or some type of, but also honestly, I feel like people, as we know, like a lot of people are influencers too. So like people sometimes are the product nowadays as well. So it's like it really, I feel like social media is like one of those places where you could just play and see what happens, and see what happens naturally.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. Since I have this unique setting for our class today, I'm wondering if you could share with me, what video that you've done yourself that you found that you're most proud of, that maybe we could share with the class,
Um,
if that works for you.
hmm, what video do I like? I think a funny video that I've done is called Existential Crisis Hour. It's probably on
Okay.
YouTube somewhere. Um,
Excellent. Yeah, I think I see it here.
and it's like just a funny video about like overthinking or having this internal dialogue within yourself about your work or about who you are. And that's a video I think is really fun.
I love how all of your work has really, it's very, very visually stimulating. So that's why another reason I wanted to ask is because I wanted to make sure that if the students haven't seen it themselves yet, they saw some of it. Um, Here you go, I think, as long as this plays. Oh, it's only 15. Oh, this might be an ad.
Trade sends
Yeah.
you amazing coffee directly from top craft roasters around the country. Every
Can you hear it? If
Yeah,
I'm sharing my screen, you can hear it? Okay,
yeah.
just making sure.
Yes, I can hear.
If you say I'm in control, and my actions serve to give my life meaning, does it have a meaning if I choose an action? No. Are my goals necessary, or do they just serve as a way to pass the time in existence that began outside of my control? No. Does it matter?
No.
If I'm in my body and you're in yours with no way to swap, how could we ever truly be together? No matter how hard I press my face into yours, a space remains. So am I alone?
Yep. No. God, no.
If I can't choose to be born, and I'm meant to make my own rules, but I must die, is there a point? No.
Yes.
If I can make up a point, is it valid?
No.
Can we all exist with our own set of purposes for living?
Yes.
Is anyone wrong?
No.
Is wrong even a factor?
No.
Is any reality fixed?
No.
Will I ever be able to see myself the way others see me?
No.
Where does my personal bias limit me? Everywhere. Will you judge me for asking?
Yes.
Should I care?
Nope.
Is it cute? Is it you? Is it me? Is it me?
No. Yes.
How on earth did you say looking straight ahead while they were putting all those things on your head?
Oh my God, we only had one chance to do it, obviously. So we had to
Oh my
practice
gosh.
like for a few hours beforehand to do the like real version of it. So it was like kind of choreographed down to the second. So then I was like, I can't be the one to mess it up. So I was like,
Was
my
blinking, yeah.
best. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm. Can you share with us the background behind like how you came up with this idea?
Yeah, so I don't know, like when I come up with like video ideas, it's really like the feeling of like trying to convey the feeling associated with whatever concept it is. And so for me, like overthinking things, kind of like something as simple as like having breakfast or like the basic things of, oh, I'm just making my coffee. These are kind of the thoughts that kind of would be swirling through my head. So I wanted to like
Yeah.
use that as like a space, the kitchen, and having breakfast but like it being kind of turned on its head a little bit where it's like the breakfast is actually having you, in a way. And so I wanted
Yeah.
it to be kind of playing with the thoughts in that way and like the feelings that anxiety or overthinking can feel like.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that I personally feel like that really came across. Hopefully others agree. Do you have any fun stories of the most interesting person you maybe have met in your career so far, and why do you found them so interesting?
um, I don't know who the most interesting person I've met is. I think like probably the most interesting person I've met is my collaborator, who I do my projects with, like my music projects with. His name's Ray Brady. And I feel
Uh-huh.
like he's been really, really instrumental in the way that I think about my ideas and like bring them to fruition. So I feel like he's been the most interesting, but I've met a lot of different people just like at events and things like that. I feel like when I meet people, the context is always so kind of kind of like small talky that you never really get to have like that full on like deep conversation with people that much. I think the
Yeah.
designers from Rodarte are actually also really, really interesting women. I worked with them a bunch on like different campaigns and stuff like that, and I find like of the designers and artists that I've met or worked with, they're like the most like down to earth and interesting and
Oh,
like
really?
yeah, really like really focused on their work and focused on like the details of the things that they make, but also really fun to be around, and really collaborative. So I think that they're also really, really cool designers.
Oh, that's great. That's really awesome.
Mhm.
I feel like you have used your network from starting off at FIT really, really well. Any particular moments in time where you really had to lean on that network to move forward?
Yeah, so when I was like at FIT, I was telling you I worked in restaurants. So the restaurants that I was working in, I happened to work in like kind of like sceney, really kind of popular restaurants, which I think like people always give like waitress like serving or like bartending or things like that kind of a bad rap as like, oh, it's like a job you do when you like before you make it or whatever. But I think that like that was where I met so many people that then really supported me afterwards. So I would meet like tons of writers or tons of like other artists in the industry. People would just come in there and I would be able to play things for them and they would be like, "Oh, cool, like let's meet up and do this or that." So I think like having outside jobs is sometimes nice in college because then you're able to actually, especially if they're jobs within the worlds or jobs that kind of cross paths with the worlds that you want to be in. Like, and I
Yeah.
think restaurants and bars are kind of those places. Like, I feel like fashion, music, and art all kind of communicate with each other in an interesting way. So it could be maybe
Hmm.
like working at a gallery or working at a bookstore or working at a place where some of these people might congregate because then
Yeah.
you're able to actually be able to like meet people in a more organic way, I think.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Um, where did you work? Anywhere that's maybe still around?
I used to work at La Esquina, which in
Oh,
that
yeah.
time period was like so
So
crazy.
hot.
And then I used to work at this place when it first opened called Miss Lily's. I think it's gone now. It doesn't exist anymore. But
Mm.
I used to work there.
Like on
Um,
14th Street or
no, there
like
used to be one on
15th?
like Houston and um I want to say like it was like It was on Houston, but I don't remember the cross street. But it was like
West
downtown.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, cool. Um, I think one more question for me would be any advice that you may have for a student who's looking to launch their own thing, whatever it may be, their own artistic adventure.
Yeah. I would just say go for it. You can always start small. So like if you're nervous about like putting too much money into it or losing money or not, those are the really only barriers to entry, from starting your own thing. I would just start with like a finite amount of money that you're willing to like spend on the project to begin with. Like, okay, here is $700 or $500 and I'm going to create what I can with that and market it and really give it like a campaign. Like just the way that you would learn kind of in school, like um here's my two pieces or here's my um, one hat I'm gonna start with, and you just do what you like kind of would see brands doing. It's like, okay, I'm gonna gift this to some people, give a few of these to people that I think have really cool style, and then I'm gonna like post about it, and then I'm going
Yeah.
to like create a little like store, a little shop, like through social media or a website or whatever way that you want to do it, and or post it on TikTok or whatever places you think people might see it, and then kind of just get the word out about what you're doing. Maybe have an event, maybe like ask a friend if you can, oh, you're having an art show. Can I like, you know, be a part of it in some way or do something where I'm able to showcase my brand or something like that. And kind of
Yeah.
you can work in these like guerrilla ways of doing things. It doesn't have to always be such a finished like product. You
Uh-huh.
can kind of just play and just explore like ways that you would want to um, explore your brand. And I think
Yeah.
it's like you're gonna make, like I said before, you're gonna make mistakes along the process. It's really just like getting people to know about it, getting things on the right people. I've even had like a lot of like young designers reach out to me like just on social media, like designers that are kind of starting their own brands and be like, hey, would you want to collaborate or make something together for something? And I would be open to that. I think it's really just finding people that you think fit your brand's aesthetic or your style and really like trying to build with them in a way. Um,
Yeah.
and so I would just say like just do what you think also makes sense because it's like there's also so much advice everywhere and I think a lot of it is really following your own unique vision of how you see things going and trusting yourself a little bit.
Yeah. That's great. That's really great advice. Thank you. So that's the end of my prepared questions. I would love to turn it over to all of you students. Sivan.
Hello, can you hear
Hi.
me? Okay.
Yes.
Hi, yeah.
Has there been a point in your music career where you've ever like wanted to switch back into working in textiles or like change your route?
Yeah, not necessarily textiles, but there's always been like moments where I've been like, oh, I kind of want to try other things, and those were the moments where I kind of expanded and did a different medium for a while. So like we talked about music, but then I also do installation work and like gallery stuff. So I would just do those kind of projects for a little while. But it's kind of like when you start a music project, it kind of is art like goes on this cycle where you kind of have to keep doing it. So unless you like formally like break up the project or you're like, oh, I'm not doing this anymore, I think people generally expect that you're gonna keep on like putting out music or keep putting on projects. But I think you can take like extended breaks. So like for me right now, I'm kind of in one of those where I like did an album earlier this year and then I spent the second half of the year working on like an art installation for the second half of the year. And then I probably won't do music again for another like till the end of next year probably. So it's kind of like I just flip flop back and forth between different things.
Thank you.
Of course.
Hi, you able to hear me?
Yep.
Thank you so much for speaking with us today. I just wanted to ask, drawing on your background, you've collaborated with some incredibly notable people across like fashion and music and TV as well. So I was wondering how you approach networking to kind of establish and foster these important connections and partnerships.
So I think for me, it's always been just going out. Like before I did, before I was doing music, even I would go out a lot. Like me and my group of girlfriends would always just kind of be at events and doing things. And I think that was really fun for me at that time. Like I was like what, like 20, 21. So it was really fun for me to like go to these events and parties and things like that. And so I would just kind of meet people in passing that way. Now it's more so I have to make an active effort to like go out, whereas I just don't. I've done my partying, so I have to like for example, last week I didn't want to go to like this event, but my friends had me go, so I went to the GQ. They had a Man of the Year event here in LA. And then I went to another event earlier in the week for Ferragamo. So it's really just like staying kind of in the mix of things sometimes, even when you don't necessarily always like want to be out. I think it helps for people to see you. It helps like to have the press coverage. And those things kind of help to keep you relevant in a way sometimes. But as far as like networking, like my personal take has never been like, let me go to this party to specifically meet this person and do this thing and then really like make this connection. I don't really think of it like that. I'm kind of like, if we vibe and if they think I'm interesting and I think they're interesting, then usually we'll have kind of a relationship. But I've always kind of had people around me because I'm introverted to like be those more extroverted people to keep me aware of like what's going on. So I had a manager for a long time who loved like being, he was also a DJ, so he loved being a part of like the mix of different things. And so he was really great in like keeping those connections alive. And then I think I always sometimes will send like to brands that I work with that year or people that I've met that year, I'll send them a holiday card always, like a personal one. So I kind of do that, just a handwritten, like to their house, happy holidays, with maybe a picture of the most recent artworks or installations that I've done. And then I'll send that just at the end of the year just to be like thinking of you. But that's like kind of the extent of like my networking. But I think there's people that really do a great job at it.
Yeah, thank you. That's really cool.
Thanks.
Hi, I love your idea of your video. Yeah, I'm trying to open my camera, but I don't know why it doesn't work. So I will just ask my question. Do you have any tips for newcomers starting their own music or art career regarding finances? Like for example, if I am oil painting artist, so I have to spend a lot of time for my art, but I also have to pay my studio rental. So do you have any tips for a beginner?
Yeah, I think in the beginning stages, having your like studio in your house is always kind of like the best move. I kind of do that. I know for oil painting, it's a little bit difficult because you can't really like work large, and I know the apartments in New York are pretty small on their own, but um, in LA, it's a little bit easier because you get a little bit more square footage to be able to like create your office at your house or something like that. But even like maybe like a parent's garage, I know a lot of like really like painters that are like doing well right now, they'll just like rent out a random garage from someone or something like that. And I know in New York that's still pretty expensive. But I would just say maybe working smaller to start, or going in on a studio with a bunch of friends in one studio, so you guys can maybe each put up like less money to have one space that you all share. And then I think that's also better for a lot of art forms because then you're able to collaborate or like get feedback on what you're doing and more of like a creative space. So those are my tips. But in the beginning stages of all of that stuff, it's really like, I think you just have to do what you can with what you've got. But I think a lot of really cool stuff comes from that too, of like not having all the colors or not having the best materials. I think it really forces your creativity to like go to the next level, you know?
Yeah, that's very cool. Thank you for your answer.
Hey, you're welcome.
Sorry, I realized I was muted. Jolene.
Hi, can you guys hear me? We're seeing.
Yes.
Hi, so thank you for coming. Just a question about like your process, like in doing visual like installations and stuff, like what's the process behind it and like how much like how is your approach different from like when you're doing music, or is it like the same kind of thought process for both?
Well, I usually work in like I'll have a theme that I want to explore like for a project, and I'll usually explore it in a bunch of different mediums. Like if I still find it interesting after I do one, I'll keep going through the next medium. So like for example, my last album American Girl, that was an idea that I had for an album, but then it was so rich like how much you can explore within that theme, or like you could explore like blackness, you could explore like generational trauma. You could explore like so many different facets of what it means to be an American and who gets to experience the American dream, that I was then able to like put that into the essay form or put it into like coming up with visual components for the album. So it's really like the theme of the question that really brings it through to those other processes. And so I think when I'm coming up with an album idea or even an installation idea, I don't really like work until I come up with that idea. So like I don't have the idea for my next album, so I'm not gonna like search for it. Eventually, like it's gonna just pop into my head like what's interesting to me. And then usually when I get that, I'll come up with a title, or I'll come up with like I'll start making some mood boards around like what I might see visually that go along with that theme. So I'll be like, oh, I want to kind of play in this 70s world of like, I don't know, Western, or and then I start doing research around that, and I'll research artists and visual elements that I think might be interesting to fit with that. And then from there, I'll start like, once I know what the world looks like in my head, at least for an album, then I start writing. And then I think in terms of like genre and themes and things that musical elements that I think could be interesting for this theme. And like, what world do we want to live in? Do we want to live in like rock, Americana, or do we want to live in hip hop? Like, because I also do so many different genres. So it's like really just building out the world. And then from there, I start to write and just keep adding and adding and adding until eventually it's like done.
Yeah, thank you. That makes so much sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions out there? Matthias.
Yes, hi, how are you?
Hi.
Nice
Hi.
to meet you. Thank you so much for being here with us. I have many questions for you, but all of them were answered all along the presentation. I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. And but something it came out to my mind. I am a fashion designer student. I'm not finishing. So, and it came to my mind that you said that you sometimes collaborate with new designers. And I'm wondering how usually a new designer reach out to a star to tell them, I have this idea, or I'm working in these dresses or stuff, and would you like to see it? How did they connect with you? Or
I think for me, they've all either maybe potentially been at a show. Like, so if there's like, my shows are not that huge, so like I can have one-on-one moments with people because I can, after the show, go talk to people and start having discussions with them. So sometimes it's been like that. where people are like, oh, I've been working on this thing. Would you want to see it? But I'm also like open to those kind of things. I think like I like having that kind of conversation with people. Um, or people have just DM'd me. And on the odd, and I don't really look at my DMs that much, but on the off chance that I might see it, people will DM, and I might see it and be like, oh, cool, cool, cool. Like a lot of brands will reach out for like gifting and things like that. But I think it's like if if the artist you're reaching out to really fits the aesthetic of your brand, I'm sure that they would want to at least wear it or at least accept it for gifting, you know? And I know that sucks on your guys' end because you're like, okay, I don't know what I'm gonna get out of this. I'm gonna send this to them, but I spent this money to make this. So I don't know what's gonna happen. But sometimes it can lead to things. I think also stylists are really cool people to know because they have connection to so many different artists. But I think also just being around and in the real actual scene of the fashion world, and going to events and going to these places, you're gonna just meet people because they all kind of intersect with each other. So it's like you'll meet other stylists or designers or go to like a magazine party or go to something like a dazed party or a if they have something in New York or go to um, just be around things that are happening. And I think eventually it all will kind of work out because you'll just meet the right people to bring it to the next level, you know?
Mhm. Oh, yes. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Anyone else out there?
I feel like all my advice is just like partying, which I think is the worst advice, but
Hey,
I feel like
fun advice. No, no.
yeah.
No, it's great. I mean, it's just really cool to hear a story of someone who went to FIT and had a career change and went a totally different route and is still making it work and flourishing. And I think there's a lot of advice to pass on for that. So we really really appreciate you giving us your time, and please stay in touch.
Thank you so, so much. It was really been fun to talk to you guys, and good luck with everything in your careers going forward. I hope I see you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you
Um,
so much.
Students, as a follow-up to some of the questions from last week, I have just a bit more to share with you on here. So I'm sharing my screen with you. So just a reminder, next week we have Ting Lee coming, who is the Vice President of Creative and Creative Director at Saxoff Fifth. So Amy asked last week about some courses specifically that I would recommend if you wanted to learn a little bit more about running a business. And some of these, the first one I recommend is FM 203, which is Business Intelligence in Planning and Buying. There's no prerequisite for this class. However, I will say it's a bit challenging mathematically. Having said that, it's retail math. It's not rocket science, but if you always struggled with math, you probably wouldn't love this course for that. However, maybe you could take it pass fail and learn a little bit about what it takes to run a business. I think there's a lot of really great stuff to be learned in there. And the way that this new course has been designed, the 203 course, it's based off of case studies. So I think it makes it a lot more interesting than just straight up textbook learning. FM 207 is called Retail Strategies. It's about running different ways of running your store in the store setting. So it's a lot of different ins and outs about the store functionality. FM 251, I've never taught, I don't actually know so much about it, but it was called Small Store Fashion Retailing, which I felt like would be super relevant for someone launching a new brand. However, the prerequisite for it is FM 108, which is the fundamentals of the fashion industry. Also a very interesting course, kind of really takes you around. I mean, if you're finishing out a degree here in the design department, you may feel it's a little redundant, but I think FM 108 is a really great foundational course for learning everything about the fashion industry. Same goes for FM 116. It kind of teaches you the best practices for running a business. This PowerPoint will be posted, and you can see here this link, FBM courses. is active. So if you want to go and peek around in there, it may help you as well to find other courses. And as I mentioned last week, I always like to do, yeah, anytime, Amy. I always like to do a little reading, kind of a little lesson on reading a sales report. In your role, as most of you want to be designers, although I know some of you are different paths, even if you're thinking of going into marketing or styling or what have you, reading a sales report is something that could be really helpful to you, because these reports get distributed every single Monday morning or Tuesday morning after they come out. So the buyer or the salesperson is going to frantically work on Monday mornings to digest all this information and get it out to you in a way that you can digest as a designer. But if you are able to read the reports yourself, it makes you so much more intelligent with your decision making, and it also makes your conversations that much more in depth. And my first piece of advice would be to you that if you started a corporate job or even a small company job, your first day on the job, or the first week, make sure you get with your buyer or merchandiser and just discuss current sales and ask them to take you through the Monday selling reports that they look at. Every single company, they look a little bit different. So what I'm trying to go over with you here is just some obvious buzzwords that you may hear. If you're on an internship or anything like that, this is a really great time to just familiarize yourself with it. No one is ever going to sit and ask you to create these reports or tell us what the formula is to make these numbers. All that I think should be expected of you is that you can read this report and you can understand what people are talking about when they say, certain key performance indicators. So I have pulled some old sales reports for you. In fact, I pulled a very terrible week of selling to show you, but this top line financial is from Macy's. It is a week selling report, so it's what happened last week in this instance. The first column here, can you guys see my cursor? Hopefully. So the first column is what the breakdown is. So at the very top line, it's total omni. This means the entire store, what they did. And then it's broken into brick and mortar and Macy's.com. So brick and mortar and Macy's.com added together equal the total omni. Then brick and mortar is further broken down to these 5 sub geographic locations: Northeast, North Central, Northwest, South, and Southwest. Obviously, all in the US in this particular report. And those 5 numbers roll up into what this brick and mortar number is. And the headers here, so the first thing that you're going to want to look at is what time frame are we talking about? In this case, we're talking about the week. So only 1 week of selling, but sometimes this could say season or month or year, or oftentimes it's written out as WTD, week to date, STD, season to date, or YTD, year to date, MTD, month to date. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at the selling. The first column is TY, or this year. This is the dollar amount that was sold this year. And then the next column is the plan. So this is what was planned to be done. And this column that comes in next is the percent to the plan. So this is the difference as compared to what the plan number was. In this case, a terrible week. We were down 29.2% to the plan. You could look at what the dollar amount difference is. It was supposed to be 223. It was 158. So pretty significant, $70,000 difference. This column to the right of the percent plan is LY. So that is comparing it to last year. You can see this is also an equally bad selling period to last year, down 48% to last year in this last column. And it's important to always be looking at last year and plan, because last year is important. It gives you a benchmark, but a lot of things can change from year to year. Stores can open, stores can close. There could be a pandemic. There could be any number of things that make the last year number sort of irrelevant. The plan number is the most important number when it comes to what you will be reviewed on, or the buyer or the salesperson or the merchandiser will be reviewed on. But looking at last year can also tell you another story. Maybe it's important to note that we're beating last year, even though we closed, 5 different stores throughout the region through the year. So they're both important, but kind of for different reasons. Questions before I move forward? Okay. This next page is a class selling report, but it could also go as far down to the style selling. So just as I noted on the last page, at the top of the page, you kind of want to know what time frame we're talking about. In this case, it says WTD. Does anyone remember what that means when it's WTD? What I just told you? Yes, thanks, Alexandra. It's week to date. So we're talking about the week. We're talking about what happened last week. We're not talking about the entire season. But then we have it broken out here into classification. So in this case, this is a ready-to-wear department. So the different classes are dress, knit, woven, sweater, jacket, vest, legging, pant, skirt. So obviously, I just showed you on the first page, we had a really bad week to plan. Now let's try to figure out which classifications within the department we're doing so badly that we misplanned so bad. In the first column is the sales dollar amount and the unit amount. They're both important for different reasons. When you're talking about different metrics, you might want to use units instead of dollars, because dollar sales take into account that some things are marked down, whereas sales units kind of remain steady throughout time. Does anyone know what AUR means? Has anyone worked in a store perhaps and heard that term thrown around before? AUR, anyone? It means average unit retail. So what it means is how much each unit was sold for. So in the case of the total department, it was $30 last week. Last week AUR was $30. This is just taking the dollar amount and dividing by the sales units amount, and that's how you get that formula. AUR is super important because if you as a designer know that you were making everything to cost $89, say, for instance, and it went out the door at $30, it just kind of gives you a big eye opener on how much your price is changing on a given week. And obviously, the more you look at these reports, the more you're going to notice similarities or differences and things that are important to you. The next column is sell-through, ST%, and it's given in both dollars and units. Sell-through means if you have 100 of these styles, 100 units of this style, for instance, and you sold through 2.8% of them, that's basically what a sell-through is. So it's the percent that you have remaining, how much of it was sold away and is gone now. Obviously, you want that number to be higher and higher. I mean, if it's the first week you're selling a style and it's 100% sell-through, that means you did not buy enough at all, and that's a bit of a problem. But it also clues you in as the designer that you have a runaway hit, a really successful style, a really successful classification, and you should be designing more into that. So here we can see the best selling classification for the week was vests with a 5.7% sell-through. There's probably a little bit of an opportunity to have more vests. The next two columns represent the stock. So, we could have a really high sales number, but it doesn't really mean anything if we also had a really high stock number. So I think what's really important for you to read here as a designer is how the stock and the sales compare to each other. So in this case, there was a lot of investment put into dresses. You can see it's 43% of the stock was put into dresses, but it only returned 30% of the sales. This is the percent of the sales. This is the percent of the stock. The difference there is a really big problem. It means that you have money sitting in dresses that could be working in other classifications that are outpacing their stock, such as sweaters. It's 19% on a 12% stock. And so as a go-forward strategy, you should try to move around the stock dollars so they all even out with where you actually sold the product. One final benchmark is this weeks of supply, which I think is thrown around quite a bit in the industry, and that just means how many weeks you have on hand of a given style or classification. So how long will it take you to sell out of this product? In the case of the dresses, you have almost a year supply, 50.6 weeks until it's gone. I told you it was a really bad week. So just a flash of those key terms: TY equals this year, LY equals last year, PL equals plan, week to date, or WT equals week to date, STD, season to date, etc. Month to date and year to date are also thrown around. Sales to stock is the percentage of selling in sales compared to the percentage of selling in stock. Sell-through is the percent of stock sold. And then the weeks of supply is how long it will take you to sell out of something. And that's style selling in a, in a nutshell. But does anyone have any questions?
It's very interesting, but my brain almost exploded for a minute.
This is why I say that's why I always start with that first piece of advice. When you start on the job, ask someone to talk you through it. Don't feel stupid that you don't understand it, because you shouldn't understand it. It's not what you've been trained in. It's not what you should understand. However, it's important. It's important that you know, because you become a really good advocate for yourself if you can just read these reports and understand them a little bit better. Charlie.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm starting a job in PR next semester, and I'm
Oh,
wondering
cool.
like how can these sales reports sort of like how can like my job in PR help aid the sales reports? Like is it like a cause and effect kind of thing, or how do we like work together?
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on what your role exactly is going to be in PR. But if you are at all in charge of choosing what gets featured in, what gets sent to influencers, or what gets featured in a magazine, or what actually goes into your brand's advertising department, being able to read the sales report will make you a lot smarter in making your decision making, because, you know, the higher penetration of a product, or like the further it goes, the bigger of a style it is in selling, is obviously going to bode even better if it's advertised and more people know about it. So, just being able to read the reports and knowing what the best sellers are can help you.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
But again, I think it's a question you ask on the first day. Ask someone if you, assuming you end up on a distribution that sends you a sales report every week, don't just ignore it coming to your inbox. Open it up and ask someone around you, hey, can you talk to me about what these numbers mean so that I can understand it a little better?
Okay.
It'll just make you stronger.
Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Well, great. If you have any of that come up, I'm happy to discuss it all with you. And I hope you all have an awesome Thanksgiving. Those of you who celebrate, those of you who don't, enjoy a nice vacation. And I will see you on Monday for Ting Lee. And I'm really excited to introduce her to all of you.
Thank you, Professor. Happy Thanksgiving.